everybody, it's Leslie here, and today I'm doing another witchy video. I wanted to really focus today on the topic of essentially psychic attacks, but as the title says, this is a how to know if you've been hexed or cursed type of video. Now, I say that this is mostly going to be about psychic attacks because at least, the way that I see it, hexes and curses and all of those things that, within witchcraft, it's people sending a certain kind of negative energy your way. That is really more broadly classified as a psychic attack. And there are a lot of different kinds of psychic attacks that can occur, even outside the spectrum of people, like, consciously and purposely trying to curse you or whatever. So I really wanted to touch up on all the different kinds of psychic attacks that can happen, and how can we really differentiate between all of them. How can we know if we are being victim to these types of attacks? What do they mean, etc. So just so that we can all really be informed on psychic attacks and what they are, how we can defend and protect ourselves against them, and so forth. So to start out, I guess I really just wanted to outline the different kinds of psychic attacks that exist. And I am going to kind of periodically talk about how we can know if we are under attack for each specific kind of psychic attack. At the end, I'm going to talk specifically about how you can really tell if you have been cursed, which is, when somebody literally puts a curse on you via ritualistic means. So first of all, when we're delving into the different kinds of psychic attack, the first one that I wanted to touch up on was the evil eye, or mal de ojo, as we know it in, Latin America and Spanish-speaking cultures. So evil eye, or mal de ojo, is something that is a really ancient notion, and it's funny because I literally just saw a thread on Twitter about this specific topic, and it seems like it was somebody who was of Arabic descent. And they were really going into it how the evil eye notion really dates back to Arabic culture. And I can't remember specifically what they were saying, but basically I think in Arabic culture they related a lot to jinn, which is, I think in their culture, it's basically like an evil entity of some sort, or I don't know, I think jinn can sometimes be neutral or not evil, but most of the time jinn are evil, or they are low vibrational beings that essentially prey on people, and they are kind of energy vampires of some sort. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. I just thought it was interesting that I just saw this topic come up recently, and I got to learn a little bit about, what the Arabic origins of the evil eye are. So I feel like within pop culture, even that's really popular, even though we don't even know that that's where it comes from. So those evil eye charms that you see on bracelets and jewelry, or home decorations and stuff like that, that's a little glass bead that looks like a blue eye. Basically, I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about. That's an evil eye charm, and it's used literally to deflect evil eye and to deflect that type of energy. So what evil eye really is essentially when people are transmitting some type of malicious intent onto you through their gaze. And most often this is related to people who are feeling a lot of jealousy or envy towards you, or just general malice, like someone that doesn't like you, and maybe they just don't want you to have good things. They don't want you to be happy. They don't want you to succeed. So they're kind of just watching you and watching everything that you do, keeping tabs on you just so that they can shit on everything that you do. So for example, this would be I don't know, when you're over here stalking your ex's new girl, and you're just watching her, feeling all salty and just hating her, even though you don't even know who she is or anything about her. You're just kind of sending that evil or malicious energy against her just by watching her, just by stalking her page, or whatever. Now, this can be really subconscious, meaning we're not actually watching somebody with the intent of, oh, like, I want them to suffer, I want them to, have bad things happen to them. It can be really unconscious, where just our gaze of watching somebody and feeling these negative feelings against them, that can definitely be evil eye, a more unconscious type of evil eye. But sometimes it can be conscious, where you're watching somebody and you're literally wishing bad things will happen to them. You're wishing bad things onto them. So for example, if you're watching somebody who, I don't know, like, let's say, there's that person in your class that has really good grades all the time, and they're just like, really good looking and really athletic. They have all these friends, and you're just always watching them and keeping tabs on them. And like, for some reason you don't like them, or you don't think they deserve all those things that they have. Maybe you want those things for yourself, and your way of feeling like you should have them is by thinking that someone else shouldn't have them. So you could be actively watching them, wishing like, oh my god, like, I just really want, like, her boyfriend to dump her. I just really want them to fail a test once in a while. I just want this or that to happen to them, right? So that's like a more conscious form of evil eye, where you're just actually watching somebody and transmitting these negative intentions onto them, wishing harm onto them. So like I said, evil eye, it's basically transmitted through the gaze. Now that sounds probably kind of stupid, like, oh, how's like watching somebody going to like do anything to them? But realistically, I mean, if you think about it this way, when you're watching something or somebody, that's you really projecting your consciousness or your energy onto them and really focusing on them, to the degree that, like, even, for example, you can feel when someone's watching you. Like, has that ever happened to you, where you're like out in public and you feel watched? Like, you can feel somebody's gaze onto you. You can turn around and see exactly where that's coming from, even though you don't consciously see it, because you feel that gaze. When someone is watching you, like, you can literally feel their energy on you. So a gaze is honestly something that's very powerful, that a lot of people, most people, aren't really conscious of how powerful a gaze can be. So, consequently, obviously, if you're watching somebody or somebody's watching you and they're directing a certain kind of energy onto you, then that can definitely affect you quite a bit. Now, I feel like this can vary on the different kinds of effects that can happen, and I feel like it really depends on the person. I mean, some people will say that, like, oh, they have a really good left hand, which in witchcraft terms, that means that they have a really powerful skill when it comes to cursing or hexing. Obviously not everybody practices witchcraft, but I feel like this can also translate just in terms of average people, and the fact that some people just have, I don't know, just like a more innate talent, if that's even considered a talent. Some people have more of an innate ability to direct negative energy, or just direct energy in general. So when evil eye is being exercised, I guess, I feel like, depending on the person, they might actually bring negative things to happen to you. Like, let's say that, I don't know, this is just an example that comes to mind, but if there's somebody, like, you have a relationship with somebody and you and your boyfriend are doing really good, and suddenly you start having problems out of nowhere, and what if they have a really jealous, crazy ex that hasn't moved on? They still feel like, oh, that's still my man, like, if I can't have him, nobody can have him, kind of thing. And if she's the kind of person who just really has the ability to project energy very adeptly, like, her portraying and I guess not portraying, but projecting that hatred and that malicious energy onto you and your man and your relationship, it might actually have an effect. As for, all of a sudden you're fighting all the time, all of a sudden you feel really distant from each other, all of a sudden you just can't get along, or you don't feel the same towards each other, you're having all of these problems, could definitely be caused by evil eye or mal de ojo. Like, you know, somebody's literally preying on the demise of your relationship and wishing that it will happen. Now, you know, sometimes mal de ojo or evil eye will manifest in more subliminal kinds of ways. Like maybe bad things aren't literally happening to you or around you, but it can manifest as intrusive thoughts. And this is something that I'm going to kind of touch up on a little bit more later, because I feel like that's sort of like a different category that can stem not just from evil eye, because sometimes intrusive thoughts actually come from, you know, like non-corporeal entities that, you know, like the jinn that I was saying, they're like literal entities that are just low vibrational, they're energy vampires, and they feed off of your negative energy. So, you know, intrusive thoughts can happen whether it's from a person, like a physical corporeal being sending you malicious energy, or it can come from a non-corporeal being that is also sending you these malicious energies. But nonetheless, I mean, just to kind of glaze over it right now, intrusive thoughts are really, like I said, you know, thoughts. That's very self-explanatory. Thoughts that don't belong to you. Thoughts that are coming from some external source that usually are negative thoughts. So they're going to be interrupting your normal, you know, mental dialogue, interrupting the normal flow of your own mental energy, your own, you know, emotional, spiritual energy. It's going to interrupt that. That's why it's intrusive. It's kind of like redirecting you towards something else. So for example, you know, if somebody is really preying on your demise and hoping that you'll, you know, fail and not be successful, that you won't be happy, maybe all of a sudden you're just feeling really shitty, you're feeling really anxious, you're really worried, you're really self-conscious for no reason, you're feeling really depressed and really hopeless. And it can be like out of nowhere that you're feeling all of these things. And it can definitely be because somebody out there is literally, you know, sending you these negative energies that are manifesting as intrusive thoughts for you, that all of a sudden you're doubting yourself, all of a sudden you're feeling like you don't like yourself, you're worried that you are going to fail, you're worried that, you know, whatever. Because those energies that somebody else is sending you, you are receiving them somehow, and they are, you know, being seeded into your consciousness. But like I said, you know, these thoughts aren't yours. They are being sent from a third party. So that's sort of the first category with the evil eye or mal de ojo. And I just wanted to clarify that this is kind of what I would classify as a hex. Now, okay, let's put it this way. Most of the time I do use the term hex or curse interchangeably. Like I would say, oh, you know, to hex someone is like to curse someone, and that would be like ritualistic, you know, literally doing a ritual, you know, witchcraft to send a curse onto somebody. But a lot of people I've seen that, you know, consider a hex to be like a non-ritualistic sort of thing, where you're just literally speaking ill onto another person and wishing ill onto another person. So I just wanted to put that out there, just because, you know, I feel like that's something that a lot of people might resonate with, that maybe, you know, you can be hexed even without somebody literally, you know, going to a witch and paying them to curse you, or actually doing a ritual themselves, right? Because it still affects you quite a bit. It can still affect you, you know, almost as bad as if somebody was full on cursing you. But anyways, moving on to the next category, I have energy vampires listed as another kind of psychic attack. Now, energy vampires can come in corporeal or non-corporeal forms, meaning an energy vampire can be a physical person, and, you know, a human being that is flesh and bone just like you are. But an energy vampire can also be a non-corporeal entity. It can be a ghost, a spirit. It can be a thought form, which for any of you who are wondering what a thought form is, a thought form is essentially literally that, a thought or an idea. It's basically an energy or a collection of energies that has been given so much intent. It has been given so much energy from a sentient corporeal person that it kind of becomes a sentient being of its own. Now, this might sound kind of confusing, but the best way that I can explain it is this. Back, let's say 5 years ago, I think, I was like clinically depressed. Like literally, I had to go see a psychiatrist. I was on antidepressants to manage my depression because I was clinically depressed. Now, what happened to me is that this energy of depression, which was really like a conjunction of a lot of different energies, it was a lot of my repressed trauma from childhood and just a lot of things that happened to me growing up. It was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of feelings of just like despair because of the state of the world, a lot of different like negative energies that I was carrying. And I feel like what happened is that I went pretty much like 20 years almost carrying these energies within me and kind of feeding them with more and more energy because I believed in them. I believed that these were my reality. I believed that, I am inadequate, I am this and that, the world is a shithole, people can't be trusted, people are evil, this and that, suffering is just the law of the land, like all of these different ideas that I believed in and that I fed with my energy through belief and through keeping them alive, through reinforcing those beliefs. So eventually, honestly, like I felt like my depression was an entity of its own. It was alive. It had an agenda. And that's literally a thought form. My depression became a thought form. It became an entity that had an agenda. Most of the time, these thought forms that are energy vampires, their only agenda is to survive. And the way that they do that is by feeding off of more of your energy. Okay, because that's all they need in order to be alive, is to be fed consistently so that they can continue, becoming more and more powerful so that they can further the cycle. It's a vicious cycle because it really doesn't lead to anything besides you being drained. Okay, so this thought form that was my depression, it just wanted to keep feeding off of me, feeding off of my despair, feeding off my grief, feeding off my hopelessness, my self-loathing. Okay, so it was very much like I was in this battle against myself, against this part of myself, because I don't really want to like identify too much with that thought form. I don't identify with it anymore. It was a part of me, it came from me, but it's not a part of me that I feel like I am truly in alignment with, hence why eventually I stopped feeding it and I got rid of it. Okay, so that is a thought form. It's just a thought or an idea or a collection of thoughts, energies, ideas that has been fed so much energy until it becomes sentient. It has an agenda and a will of its own. And usually these thought forms that are vampiric in nature, their only agenda is to keep feeding off of you or even other people, right? Because a lot of the times what happens is if somebody is being haunted or possessed by an entity or a thought form that is vampiric in nature, it won't be enough just to keep feeding off that person. Because what happens is that when somebody has an entity that is latched onto them, after so long of having this attachment, that person is going to be basically depleted of energy. Okay, that person no longer has a battery of their own that they can feed off of or that the entity can feed off of. So what will happen is that this person now will begin to feed off of other people. Okay, so what I was saying, that energy vampires can be both corporeal or non-corporeal in nature. A lot of the time, people who are energy vampires are only energy vampires because they have a non-corporeal energy vampire that is attached onto them. They are literally being possessed and driven by some, non-corporeal being that is forcing them to be this draining vampiric sort of person. So, realistically, an energy vampire overall, whether they are a physical or non-physical being, it's just a being or an entity who has an agenda or a need to feed off of other beings' energies. Most of the time, they will feed off of negative or low vibrational energies. So, they will harvest your fear, they will harvest your anxiety, they will harvest your anger, your sadness, all of these kinds of negative energies. Now, you might be wondering, why don't they feed off of positive energies? Well, realistically, I kind of feel like, people who are healthy feed off of other positive energies. And this is like a natural thing because we are always in flux with everything around us. We are connected to everything around us, and we are always receiving stimulus from everything and everyone around us. Now, given that you are a healthy person, who is connected to themselves and their own energy, you can produce your own energy and you don't have a need to feed off of other energies. I mean, you are always consuming energy, and the healthy thing is that you will somehow feed off of, or I don't want to say feed off of because that kind of carries a negative connotation, but you will consume positive energies from sources around you. So that's why, healthy people will oftentimes be drawn towards other healthy people or other healthy sources of energy that feed them in a positive way. So, maybe you like making people happy, you like helping people, you like heartwarming content, of just being in communion with nature, with animals, being in harmony with other people. I mean, that is what it is like to be a healthy person who feeds off of positive energy. But when you're not a healthy person, when you're not a healthy entity, most of the time, you feed off of negative energy because, I don't know, like that's just probably what carries the most charge to continue feeding, this low vibrational energy that you carry within you. I guess what I'm saying is that only low vibrational beings need to feed off of other beings, so they're only going to want to feed off of other low vibrational energies because that is what they are programmed as, if that makes sense. They're basically like dementors. Like, if any of you are familiar with Harry Potter and the lore in Harry Potter, and how dementors are literally these entities that feed off of people's sadness, anger, despair, grief, trauma, and that's why, in the books or the movies, it's like Harry Potter is the most affected by the Dementors because, he literally witnessed his mother being murdered when he was a baby, and he was abandoned. He was abused his whole life. He had so much negative energy that the Dementors could feed off of. That's why he was severely affected by them when other people weren't as affected by them. It's basically the same concept with energy vampires in real life. Now, I don't want to get too ranty because I feel like I'm kind of like all over the place here, but like I was saying, energy vampires, they can be corporeal or non-corporeal beings. They harvest your negative energies and they feed off of them. And like I said, most often, or a lot of the time at least, people who are energy vampires are also probably possessed by some kind of entity that is driving them to be energy vampires and to try to feed off of other people around them. Now, just so that you get an idea of how this actually works, energy vampires, most of the time, you can recognize them because they are the kind of people who, they're pretty negative, and this might not even be like super obvious, because maybe on the surface they can be really nice people, they can be cool to be around, they can be friendly, whatever, but they usually have this really dark, really negative side to them where, they could be overtly or even secretly trying to instigate chaos, trying to instigate drama. They are usually very manipulative kinds of people. They are the kinds of people who, literally start fights, literally, go out of their way to be hurtful, to create some kind of turmoil in other people's lives. Because if they make you feel bad about yourself, if they make you angry, if they, create chaos or drama in your life, like that's all situations that are going to elicit emotional reactions from you so that they can feed off of them. Now, like I said, sometimes these people are also being possessed by entities that are driving them to do this. Sometimes people are just energy vampires for no reason, because, someone could be an energy vampire just because they don't have a connection to their own seat of power, and therefore they need to steal your power and everybody else's power, right? But, a really good way to tell if you are around an energy vampire, like physically, is just really consulting with yourself on how a person makes you feel. How do you feel when you spend time with them? How do you feel after you spend time with them? You can oftentimes just tell. Those people that just make you feel really drained for no reason. And it can even be like, it can be really covert, because sometimes it's really obvious. People that are just really mean, people who are really chaotic, people who are always trying to pick a fight with you, like that's really obvious. But some people are really covert about it. Like maybe they're not, actually instigating fights or anything like that all the time, but an energy vampire could also be a person who is consistently trying to dump their shitty energy onto you. So, those friends that have no boundaries, they always want to be talking about themselves and talking about their trauma, talking about, negative things going on in the world, and they're just like constantly unloading all of this super heavy negative energy onto you, and they're not really feeding you anything positive. They're not returning the favor. It's not reciprocal. It's not like you can, not dump onto them, but it's like a really one-way sort of thing where you just always feel like that person is dumping negative energy onto you. So, those are a couple of the ways that you can tell, just really observing the way that your interactions with people go, how they make you feel, observing people's behavior, and trying to really gauge, like, what kind of energy exchange is going on, because you can feel that. Some people literally make you feel replenished and you feel like there's this energy exchange, there's a back and forth, they feed you, you feed them, and so forth. Some people just take, or literally like rob you of your energy, and you can feel that. Now, when it comes to non-corporeal energy vampires, sorry, I'm like watching these candles behind me, they're like making weird noises. But when it comes to non-corporeal energy vampires, those are a little bit harder to pin down because obviously they're not physical beings, you can't see them. So, it can be really tough to know. But honestly, like, this just really comes with presence. And what I mean by presence is, being really connected to yourself, connected to your body, your emotions, your mind, your spirit, connected to your space, and just really observing, the way that you feel on the day-to-day. Because if you're, constantly tired, you're constantly in a bad mood, you're constantly having symptoms that manifest mentally, like, maybe even mental health issues could be a sign of, an entity attached onto you, such as what I said about me and my depression and how I truly feel like it was a thought form. It could be, excess anxiety and rumination, which means you're overthinking and over-focusing on problems instead of trying to find solutions. Like, these are all telltale signs of perhaps you have something that's attached to you and that is really guiding you to, kind of let yourself fall into the abyss and just kind of, really carry these negative, heavy energies onto you. And this is where I really want to talk about intrusive thoughts, because this is one of the main things that I think can really tell you that you are under psychic attack, whether it is from an entity, like a non-corporeal entity that is attached onto you or that is trying to latch onto you, or whether it is intrusive thoughts that are coming from another person, such as, evil eye. Somebody is really preying on your downfall and wishing that you'll hate yourself as much as they hate you or whatever, or as much as they hate themselves. Because a lot of the time, if you're the kind of person sending evil eye, it's probably because you hate yourself and you want other people to hate themselves. But regardless of that, intrusive thoughts, I think, are one of the main ways that you can oftentimes tell that you are under psychic attack. Okay, 1 second. I need to put these candles out before they burn my house down. Taking a wee break just to do that. Okay. Alright. Sorry about that interruption, but intrusive thoughts. Now, for those of you wondering, what the fuck is an intrusive thought and how do I know when I'm having intrusive thoughts? Well, let me tell you. Obviously, everybody is bound to experience negative thoughts at some point in their lives, right? And negative thoughts aren't always an intrusive thought. They're not always coming from some other place. Sometimes we truly are, the ones generating these negative thoughts for ourselves. Now, the way that you can tell if a negative thought belongs to you or if it doesn't belong to you, and this is just, the way that I have come to really understand it myself, so, this might differ for other people. It's honestly kind of subjective and it's kind of hard to explain, but what I've noticed for myself is that these seeded ideas, meaning that something or someone else is planting them into you, they're not being born out of you. I feel like these intrusive thoughts or seeded ideas, they feel just really mental. I literally just feel them in here. They affect my third eye and my crown a lot, and I just feel them up here. But that energy, it's there's a disconnect between that and my body. Because usually, when I have an original thought or an authentic thought or idea or feeling, because sometimes intrusive thoughts can actually also be intrusive feelings, meaning it's not a thought, it's just an emotion that you're feeling that doesn't belong to you. So when you're experiencing an original or authentic thought or feeling, I feel like you can literally feel how it's born out of you. You can feel it in your body. Okay, so I tend to mostly feel them in here, in my solar plexus, especially when they're thoughts. I really feel them in my solar plexus because that is kind of the second mind or whatever. It is the mind of the body. That's why a lot of the time they call it a gut feeling. Your solar plexus, your intestines, your abdomen, there's literally a second mind in there that can really propel a lot of ideas in a different, more abstract sort of way. But usually when I'm having my own thoughts or ideas, I feel them in here. I can literally feel them in my body, and I can feel how they're seated down here. Now, when it comes to emotions, usually I feel them in my root or in my sacral chakra. Okay, the root, I feel usually that has to do a lot more with feelings that are really primal in nature. So when I'm feeling my own fear, I really will feel it in my root. And it will even manifest in physical ailments. So for example, when I'm feeling my legs or my hips are really tight or maybe very sore, or it'll manifest as sciatica, which is literally this nerve that's in your butt basically, and it runs all the way down your legs. I'll get this really bad cramp down there. But when it's my own emotions or thoughts or whatever, it literally manifests in my body as well, and I can feel how that energy literally has a root in my body. If I'm feeling something like grief or betrayal or disappointment, I feel it here in my chest. That feeling of heartbreak and just really being closed off from the world, and you literally feel it in your heart. So, depending on the kind of thought or emotion that it is, you'll feel it in different parts of your body, but most of the time, when I'm feeling my own thoughts or my own emotions that truly do belong to me, they are authentic, I can feel the root of that energy in my own body. Okay, I can feel where it's literally coming from and where it's manifesting in my body. When it's a seated emotion or idea, I don't feel that. It's literally just like this signal that I feel in my head. And, you know, I don't hear voices. I feel like my clairaudience is kind of weird because when I hear things, it's always my own inner monologue. So I don't hear other voices. Actually, okay, I have heard voices before, only once in a while. Like, it just happened to me a few days ago, actually, when I was like asleep, and it was that stage of sleep where you're kind of starting to wake up. So I was like in between sleep and awake, and I heard this weird, like, masculine voice. It was honestly kind of creepy. It sounded kind of malicious, not gonna lie. And like, I don't know what it was. I don't even remember exactly what it was saying, but I know that I was hearing like another voice, that it was like an entity of some sort. It was fucking weird. But like, shit like that will happen to me sometimes, but most of the time when I hear things, you know, clairaudient or whatever, I hear it in my own inner voice. But sometimes my own inner voice will tell me things that I can recognize. Like, that's not my own thoughts. You know what I mean? It's almost like if my own inner voice had started to read off a fucking teleprompter, and it was just reading some bullshit that somebody told it to say, and like it doesn't even really believe it, you know? And like, I guess now with practice, I can really differentiate when these thoughts belong to me and when they don't. Before, when I was like, you know, a lot less developed and a lot less, I guess, within my power, I couldn't really tell. And I would oftentimes, you know, really listen to these thoughts that didn't belong to me. These intrusive thoughts were literally ruling my life and my decisions and how I felt about myself in my life. But, you know, that's just like a way that you can kind of tell that usually, you know, original or authentic emotions, energies, thoughts, whatever, you can really feel the root of them in your body, and you can really feel where they're coming from in parts of your body. You can feel how they're connected to your body. When they don't belong to you, when they're being seated, you mostly feel them up here, and you can feel how, you know, it's like a projection of something else. That might sound kind of weird or like it doesn't make sense, but honestly, I feel like it's just something that you come to understand with intuition. It's something that, you know, you just have to really come to know yourself. You have to come to know, I don't know, you just sharpen your discernment, I guess, and you start to be able to tell, you know, where things come from and when certain energies belong to you and when they don't. The best way that I can explain it, honestly, in like a metaphor that might make sense to people, is if any of you have ever worn fake eyelashes. You know how like if you're just not wearing anything and it's just your own eyelashes, it's almost like you can't even feel them because you're so used to them. You know what I mean? And you know that they're your eyelashes, like they've always been there. They're like attached to your eyelids, like in your eyelids. But when you're wearing fake eyelashes, and you can literally feel how it's like fake. You can feel the glue on your eyelid, and you can feel this like foreign body that's just like sitting on top of your eyelid. You know what I mean? It's something like that. Or it's almost like, you know, like if you were wearing like paint on your skin, like you can feel the paint on your skin. You can feel that there's like this extra layer on top of your skin. Whereas like you can tell, like you can feel like this is my skin. This is part of me and my body. Like that's kind of what it feels like, and like the best way that I can explain so that it kind of makes sense to people. But the last thing I wanted to touch up on in regards to this specific topic is that when you've gone a really long time or a sufficiently long time heeding an intrusive thought or emotion, meaning that, you know, you're being bombarded by certain intrusive thoughts or feelings that don't belong to you, but you've been internalizing them for so long, it's almost like you can begin to claim them after a while, and they can begin to manifest in your body as well, and you begin to feel them as if they belong to you. So in that regard, it's very tricky. It's very tricky to undo it. So, like, for example, I feel like, when I was first getting started in my spiritual journey and really getting to know, like, my own body, my own energy, and, trying to, like, cleanse myself, trying to, I guess, reprogram myself to be who I wanted to be and not who I was programmed to be. It was really weird and really difficult because I had all of these different thoughts, all of these different feelings that I feel didn't really belong to me because they were projected onto me by other people. So, for example, a really good example, I feel like growing up as a child, and honestly, this is something that I still kind of carry within me, I always had this feeling of I'm not good enough. Okay, and this really was projected onto me by my parents. I feel like mostly my mother, because I don't know, like, it was just the kind of thing where I never really received a lot of praise. I received a lot of criticism, so when I fucked up, that was definitely noticed, but when I did good things, that wasn't recognized. And slowly it just began to chip away at my self-esteem. It started to really seed this idea onto me that I'm not good enough. Nothing I ever do is good enough. Now, I say that this energy isn't really mine, and it was projected onto me because especially now I can look back onto the situation and I can see that that was my mother projecting those ideas onto me because her mother projected those ideas onto her. And like, we've actually had this conversation of, how she literally had the same experience growing up. Her mother was also very tough. She was the kind of lady, my grandma, God rest her soul, like, I love her, my mother loves her, but she had a really tough character, and she was really, I don't know, she had high expectations of people, and especially raising her kids because she was a single mom and she had to be both mother and father, so she also kind of projected that onto my mom. And who knows, for all I know, my grandma also had that same experience projected onto her of her not being good enough, right? So it's just like this line of people projecting ideas and feelings and beliefs onto the next generation and the next generation. So, eventually I grew up and I truly had this belief inside of me that I had begun to identify with it. Okay, and it wasn't really mine. Like, it wasn't mine to begin with. It's not my original programming. It's not who I want to be programmed as. So, what I have to say about that, when it comes to intrusive or external thoughts or feelings that you really feel don't belong to you, but you've been claiming them and internalizing them for so long that they feel like they belong to you, like, this is just where reprogramming yourself really comes into play, which I think I should make another video about it. I actually have made a video about this before. It's like on my Instagram channel, on that like Instagram TV or whatever. I think the video is called like reprogramming yourself or something like that. I don't know. But I did make a video like that a while back, and I suggest that you guys go to my Instagram and check that out if that's something that interests you, because this is kind of starting to veer away from the original, how do you know you've been cursed topic. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, that is a possibility for intrusive thoughts to start to feel like they are yours. And all in all, when it comes to intrusive thoughts, you just have to have a lot of discernment, a lot of presence, so that you can really be able to tell when an energy belongs to you or when it doesn't belong to you, so you can recognize when, all of a sudden you wake up feeling like shit about yourself and feeling like you're a failure and just really dejected and hopeless. Sometimes that doesn't belong to you. Sometimes somebody out there is sending you bad juju, and guess what? You have received it and you're starting to feel the effects thereof in the form of intrusive thoughts. So, moving on to the last part of this video, like I already said in the beginning, we can definitely differentiate between a hex and a curse as being, a curse is like a really purposeful, ritualistic sort of psychic attack where somebody is literally sitting down doing a ritual in order to basically do witchcraft onto you and to curse you, to curse your life, to bring negative things into your life. A hex can be seen as a less intentional, or honestly not less intentional, because sometimes hexes can be intentional, but it's not as sophisticated, I guess. It's not somebody doing a ritual to curse you. It can definitely just be somebody preying on your downfall or whatever. But you know, when it comes to really purposeful psychic attacks, such as curses, like I said, somebody's literally doing a ritual and going out of their way to really put that intent onto you. These are definitely a lot more rare. Like, I feel like, you know, psychic attack in the form of energy vampires, intrusive thoughts, and, you know, evil eye, like, that's very common, probably a lot more common than a lot of us realize. Curses, on the other hand, not that common, especially because I feel like, I don't know, a majority of people probably don't even believe in witchcraft, and even if they believe in witchcraft, they don't know how to do witchcraft, and they don't know anybody who does witchcraft so that they can hire somebody to, you know, put the bad juju on you. But it does exist. Like, it is a possibility, you know, that you could at some point be cursed. And honestly, I feel like this is a lot more common for people of color, like especially, you know, if you are Black or if you are Hispanic, you know, because I know that in both Black and Hispanic cultures, like, witchcraft is still actually pretty common. Like, it's really not that rare if you're Mexican or, you know, South American, Central American, whatever, or if you're Black, you know, if you're Caribbean, whatever. In these cultures, it's really not that rare to know somebody who knows somebody who's a witch doctor, or who is a bruja, who is a curandero, who is whatever. You know what I mean? So in those cultures, it's honestly not that rare. It's not that far-fetched to think that somebody could have put the bad juju on you and literally, like, curse you. So, you know, the only real way to know for sure that you have been cursed is by consulting with somebody who practices witchcraft, consulting with a witch, consulting with a curandero, curandera, santero, santera, mambo, or, like, you know, a voodoo practitioner, consulting with somebody who is well versed in energy, reading energy, and who is well versed on probably witchcraft. Like, that's the only way that you can know for sure, get an assessment that will tell you, you know, yes, you are cursed. A lot of the times we'll be able to tell you, you know, this is the person that cursed you, whether it's, you know, knowing a name or being able to kind of see a physical description of the person. It really depends on the practitioner. Like, you know, some people can deduce a lot more than others. I personally, I feel like I'm definitely still learning a lot about this. I can definitely, you know, scan a person's energy field and tell, you know, if there's some type of attachment onto them or anything like that. I have done this before where, you know, people consult with me, they tell me their concerns, they tell me, you know, I think that somebody did something to me for this and that reason. I'll scan their energy field through a picture of them, you know, and I'll be able to see if there's anything attached onto them or if there's any kind of negative energy that it has been sent their way or anything like that. The thing that I'm still definitely learning is I feel like I'm kind of inconsistent when it comes to being able to pinpoint who did it. I feel like, I don't know, it has happened a couple times where I'm like, you know, trying to figure out if someone is cursed or not, and I can tell that, okay, yeah, like, you have been cursed, somebody has definitely been sending negative energy your way, and I've been able to kind of see, like, you know, who the person is, like, seeing, like, okay, I can definitely see that it's a woman, she has shorter hair, or something like that, but it's pretty inconsistent. I don't always have the ability to see that. I don't really know why. I'm definitely still learning. I'm still growing as a witch. So, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, consulting with a professional basically is the only way to know for sure that you have been cursed. And also, you know, to know for sure how to fix it. Because if someone's actually cursing you, then it's best to go to a professional to get yourself cleansed and to get that shit removed, because it can be real messy trying to deal with that energy. Like, even I dealing with it as someone who does this as a career, like, I've had a case specifically where, you know, I tried for months to rid this lady of a curse. And it was the kind of thing where, like, it would go away and she would be okay for a little bit, but it kept coming back. And I feel like, you know, the other person who was doing it, I feel like they were just really insistent. Like, they just kept doing and doing and doing the work. And I honestly feel like that person was working with some real nasty entities, like demonic entities, which, you know, if I had a couple more decades of experience under my belt or whatever, like, I would probably be able to deal with something like that. But currently, you know, something that heavy, something that dark, you know, I couldn't do it. I'm not afraid to admit that, like, that was out of my field of you know, what I can accomplish, because I'm just one person, you know. And even though I can definitely transmute negative energies, there's some things that you just leave that to the people that are very, very, very experienced. But, you know, outside of, sorry, I need oh shit, there we go. Well, now you guys get to see how I put out fires. Outside of consulting a professional practitioner to know if you've been cursed, because there are ways that you can kind of be able to, you know, deduce for yourself if there's something like that going on. Usually, you know, there's both internal and external side effects. Obviously, the external side effects would be things manifesting in your reality. So, you know, you have a streak of bad luck. You know, you feel really blocked, like nothing in your life is really progressing or going your way. You just keep having all sorts of problems, having a lot of accidents. Maybe you fall ill all of a sudden, or people around you falling ill all of a sudden. I've even seen things like, you know, your plants start to die all of a sudden, or your pets start to get sick. This happens especially because both plants and pets, animals, absorb a lot of our energy, and they especially absorb a lot of our negative energy, because I feel like plants and pets both are definitely, I like to see them as like these you know, spiritual allies. Like, they are in our lives a lot of the time to help us spiritually and to be spiritual support for us. So they do absorb a lot of our negative energy and they transmute it. Animals like dogs, cats, plants, they are naturally energy cleaners, let's put it that way. So for one, don't forget to give your pets and your plants a lot of extra love. You know, I always like, when I don't have dogs anymore, but when I had dogs and when I had my cat, rest in peace, I don't have my cat anymore either, I would literally give my pets energy healing. Like, literally, like, you know, just give them energy healing to try to, like, help them remove a lot of that negative energy that they were always absorbing and transmuting for me. And, you know, same with my plants. I mean, I don't really tend to the plants, my boyfriend does, but, you know, it's really good to give your plants and your pets a lot of extra love. But anyways, you know, because plants and pets absorb a lot of our negative energy, one of the first things that you might notice if you are cursed is that your plants or your pets start to get really sick, or plants start to die, you know, things like that, because they're literally absorbing all of that negative juju and just kind of, you know, taking the hit for you. But, you know, after a while, you might definitely see, you know, other things manifesting, like just things going wrong in your life. You know, having a lot of accidents, like I said, things just really not going your way, consistently having a lot of bad luck, you know, just things like that. Like, literally what you would think of, you know, what you think would happen when you're cursed, like that type of thing. Just overall having bad luck, things not going your way, you know, feeling really blocked, etc., etc. Internal side effects, again, negative or intrusive thoughts are one of the most common things. Things that have to do with your health, whether it is mental health or physical health. Because, for example, so this is really interesting, and I just found this out like 2 days ago, because I went to lunch with my mom and we were just kind of talking a lot. And, you know, I already said that I used to be clinically depressed, but when I was younger, about 9 or so, like younger than that, my mom was also clinically depressed for a while. And she was telling me that her depression started when we lived in Idaho, and I was like in 3rd grade, I believe. Yeah, I was in 3rd grade, and we lived in Idaho for like a year. And during this time, my mom worked at this restaurant that was literally, you know, it was all Mexican people. We were in a part of town that was like heavy Mexican population. So everybody that she worked with was Mexican. And a lot of the ladies that she worked with did not like her, like at all. And she's thinking that honestly, she wouldn't be surprised if somebody at her work, you know, had literally done something to her, because that's when she got really depressed. Like out of nowhere, she just got depressed, and she was depressed for about 7 years of her life, you know, and it was like this whole battle. And the reason that she thinks this especially is because at some point after that, let's say like 5 or more years after that, she got a tarot reading from this lady in Mexico. She went with her friend, and the lady told her basically something along the lines that like somebody had cursed her, and it was somebody that literally asked that she wouldn't die, but that she would be sick and that she would suffer in some type of way, that she just couldn't be happy and that she couldn't get ahead with her life. Like that's literally what the tarot reader told her. And I mean, lo and behold, depression is exactly that. She wasn't dead. You know what I mean? She was just dead inside, and she was really ill. She was really, you know, in a rut for a long period of her life, and a lot of negative things happened to her because of that. So, you know, like that's one of the ways that curses can definitely manifest. And obviously, I'm not saying that mental illness is always a sign that you're cursed. A lot of the times, people's mental chemistry is just fucked up. Honestly, I think that was the case for me. Like, I was just messed up. I don't think anybody cursed me so that I would be depressed. But, you know, sometimes mental illness or physical illness can definitely be caused by, you know, a curse or something like that. Sometimes I think that, you know, if someone is cursing you, especially to make you ill or to bring you suffering and to prevent you from being able to get ahead with your life, I think that, you know, maybe the curse could trigger some underlying issues. So, for example, let's put it this way. My mom probably already had a propensity to being depressed. You know, so somebody went and cursed her, asked that she would be ill, that she would be miserable, that she would be unable to get ahead with her life. Well, maybe the curse just triggered that thing that was already inside of her and just really brought it out and made it that much more difficult for her to fight or something like that. But, you know, outside of that, you know, illness, whether it is mental or physical, outside of intrusive thoughts, other signs that you might have been cursed, it can really have to do with your moods, just, you know, really feeling unstable all of the time, and especially if you're just constantly feeling really negative moods, you know, being really, really angry, being really, really depressed, really sad, really hopeless, and just feeling like that hopelessness about yourself, about your life, feeling really down about yourself, because a lot of the times what will happen is that somebody doesn't want you to succeed or whatever. You know, maybe you start to just suddenly feel really shitty about yourself. You stop, you know, taking care of yourself. You stop doing things that you want to do to succeed. You know, it can just really manifest in a lot of different ways. And I feel like there was something else I was gonna say, but I'm like, oh fuck, what was it? I don't know. I guess that's it. That's like about it that I have to say about that. Okay, yeah. So the last thing I wanted to touch upon is generational curses and generational karma, because there is a difference, and these both are very real. So, sometimes curses can even be something that gets passed down from generation to generation. So maybe somebody didn't curse you personally, but let's say that this curse has been handed down for the past 4 or 5 generations. Like generational curses are definitely a thing. It's almost like that movie Holes. If anybody have watched that, I feel like I said that wrong. If anybody has watched that movie, which obviously if you're a millennial, you've probably seen Holes with Shia LaBeouf. It's fucking iconic. But like he had a generational curse, and he broke the generational curse when he took Zero up to that mountain or whatever the fuck happened. Like that's literally how generational curses work, is that somebody in your bloodline got cursed, and curses can literally be programmed to be like, I curse you and your progeny. Like I don't just curse you, I want everybody who springs from your loin to also bear this curse. And until somebody breaks that curse, like it's going to continue to be passed down. Now, this is different from generational karma, because things that get passed down from generation to generation like that aren't always a curse, like somebody literally cursed you or your bloodline. It can just be karma, like I don't know how else to explain it, but it's just an imprint of an energy that has been integrated and has been passed down. And you can even literally look at this as epigenetics within science. And if you don't know what epigenetics is, it's basically the idea that our genes don't just affect our physical bodies, like what kind of hair color or hair type you have, how tall, or how your skin color is, like any of this. It doesn't just our genetics don't just determine these things. Our genetics can influence so many other aspects of our lives. That's why things like addiction are hereditary. If you come from a line of alcoholics, chances are you might become an alcoholic, or you might have a propensity to become an alcoholic. That's why things like generational trauma are a thing. So it's something that I think I read about this in the context of like slavery, and the fact that trauma or different energies like that can be passed down for up to like 14 generations. So what I read about, and mind you, this I read on the Twitter of somebody who was African American, so like they were definitely qualified to speak on this topic. I'm not, but I'm just kind of recounting what I read because I found it very interesting. That if we run with this idea that trauma can be handed down for up to 14 generations, if you go back 14 generations, I'm pretty sure that's still going back to like slavery times, when people were literally being kidnapped and stolen from their homelands in Africa, brought to the Americas and the New World to be slaves, to be raped, to be abused, to be all of these things. And I'm so sorry if this is like triggering for anybody that I'm like, talking about this. But I don't know, I just found it very interesting, because what they were saying is that, if trauma through epigenetics is truly, capable of being handed down generation after generation, that it definitely explains why I feel like, not I feel like, but that person was making this point that, maybe a lot of people, especially of African American descent, could potentially carry imprints of that trauma that was handed generation after generation after generation. And this can even happen also to people of all cultures, and even outside the context of just slavery. Trauma can be handed down from person to person. And, that's what I would classify as generational karma. Because, for example, I'll just give you an example of something that I've kind of seen manifest in my own bloodline. I feel like I have this mother wound that is sort of like a generational curse or a generational karma within my bloodline. That there is an absent mother wound going on in my bloodline, because, for me, my mother was absent, not physically. Well, actually, throughout a lot of periods in my life she was physically absent, just because like we lived in different countries and shit like that. But most of the time it was just an emotional absence, because she was depressed and she had so many mental health issues that my mother wasn't present for me, right? For her, my mom's mother died when my mom was 2 years old. Okay, so her mother literally died when she was like a baby, an infant still, and she was raised by her grandmother. So the woman that she calls mom, that I called my grandma, that was actually my great grandma and her grandmother. Okay, but you know, even there, even though she did have a mother figure, there was this generational gap that definitely, you know, prevented her mother from fully being present for her. Now, you know, my actual grandmother, the one that died when she was about 22, I never met her. She, I think, probably also had an absent mother, just because my grandma had like 7 kids and she was a single mom for a big period of her life. And, you know, she was probably just really busy, like doing a bunch of shit, and she probably couldn't be really present in a lot of ways. For my great grandma, her mother died when she was a child. In fact, my great grandma had to raise her little brother since the time that she was 8 years old, right? So like that's literally 4 generations back that there's this absent mother thing going on. So that's kind of how you know, generational karma can work. And I don't know, I feel like this is kind of outside the scope of curses and stuff, so I'm really sorry if this is kind of like a super random tangent. But I just wanted to touch up on the idea, you know, that generational curses and karma are a thing. And, you know, I feel like it still kind of applies, just because, you know, it falls under the scope of assessing the negative or, you know, not so desirable energies that can really have an effect on us and our lives, and even our families and the people that we love. Now, in that respect, it's just about being able to differentiate, you know, whether it's like a curse or karma. In any case, you know, it's really just about coming to an awareness of that energy and that pattern and finding a way to break it. You know, with karma, a lot of the times there's just some type of lesson that has to be learned, and a lot of the times all it really needs is awareness, you know, to kind of heal from that wound, and to make peace with it and find a way to not repeat the pattern. When it comes to a generational curse, I really feel like in that case you definitely should consult somebody, because the generational curse can look like anything. You know, literally like holes. You know, their generational curse was just that they like couldn't succeed or something like that, and you know, they would have all sorts of bad luck generation after generation. If something like that is happening in your family, then you definitely want to go consult somebody experienced that can help you remove that curse and break it, because you don't want to be passing that shit on to your children and their children after that, you know. But yeah, I think that I'm gonna leave it here, because I have been ranting your ears off for I don't even know how long. But yeah, I apologize if I kind of went off on like a lot of random tangents. I kind of do that when I talk. I hope that this will have been entertaining to you guys at the very least, and that you'll have learned something, or that you will have found some information that is useful to you. But all in all, you know, I really thank you for tuning in. And if anybody has any kinds of questions or comments or anything like that in regards to this topic or anything else witchy, you can feel free to leave that in the comments, or you can reach out to me via Twitter DM or Instagram DM. I'll put my information down below for those of you that don't follow me already. And especially, you know, if you are worried that you have a curse or a hex or any kind of thing like that going on, an entity attachment, anything like that, and you would like help with that, then by all means, please reach out to me. I will give you my assessment free of charge. You know, I do like to give people assessments of what I think, you know, is going on, and I'll give you, you know, an idea of what I can do for you, and I'll definitely tell you if I believe that whatever you have going on is within the scope of what I can do, or if you need someone more experienced or whatever, right? But yeah, just let me know if you guys need any further help or assistance or guidance or anything like that, and I'll be glad to help you all out. But I'll leave you here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I guess I'll see you around.